I was teaching preschool during the day.
Oh man, and staying out all night? You are brave.
I mean, that was just I had the energy to do it, and it was like moving into Manhattan. It was just such an incredible time.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Kurt, for doing this.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah, I'm Adam, and this is a podcast about you, your journey in music, and we'll talk about the song and the album I think you have coming out with 100 Watt Heart.
Cool.
Sweet. I love that painting behind you too, by the way.
Oh, it's Hendrix.
Hendrix. Yeah. It's like abstract though. I love that. That's really cool.
He sort of looms over everything figuratively and literally. And in this particular painting, if you get closer, you see he's like made up of all these other acts. I don't know if you can read, but
oh yeah. Whoa.
It's like a collage, and you have like different bands. There's like Pink Floyd in there, U2, Alice Cooper, Nirvana, Cheap Trick, the Black Crowes, Hootie and the Blowfish that I've been seeing here, Fleetwood Mac. There's just it's like this collage thing that sort of shows in the literal sense.
What are those called? Mosaic? Is that a mosaic where it's like a picture that makes a bunch of pictures that make a picture? I can't remember.
It sounds mosaic-esque.
I can't remember. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, from back here, you can't even tell that it's like that.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Awesome.
From afar, it just looks like a cool image of Hendrix, and as you get closer, it's like, huh?
An even cooler image of Hendrix.
Right.
That's awesome. Well, I love that. So first off, I guess, where were you born and raised in Philadelphia also? Are you from Philly?
Absolutely not. I was born in Brooklyn.
Okay. Yes. Absolutely not.
Let's get into the debunking.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I was born in Brooklyn, New York.
Okay.
And I guess East 51st Street is the exact location. And when I was 5, my family moved out to Long Island. Holbrook, Long Island, which is about exit 61 off the Long Island Expressway.
Okay.
And I started first grade out there, and I stayed there until I was about 23. And at 23, I moved into Chelsea, Manhattan, and that sort of began my journey through music in New York.
Okay.
And it's after I moved there I moved there in about 96, and about around 8 years later after moving there is when I met Rich Nichols, who was the manager of the Roots, and that's how I got involved with the Philadelphians.
Awesome. That's really amazing. So at 5 is when you moved to Long Island. And do you come from a musical household, like musical family at all?
Well, yeah, there was definitely music all around. I was definitely immersed in it. Sunday mornings, my parents, were heavy churchgoers, and they would bring me. And so there was the music that you'd hear at church. It was like a Episcopalian, kind of an Anglican household, and it was like an Anglican church is where I'd go to. So you'd hear those hymns, very melodic hymns and songs of exaltation, and then that's what would be in the house. You get back home, my parents were avid classical music fans. So
cool.
Always playing Beethoven, always playing like Debussy, always playing Handel, Bach. My brother's name is actually Handel.
Is it really?
Yeah. So they took it to that level.
That's cool.
And they would always be singing. I have vivid memories of, going to bed and hearing my parents singing in the next room, and but they also loved to have parties and to party, and so there was a lot of heavy reggae influence.
Okay.
I remember just growing up and hearing my dad play a lot of reggae, and just I mean, my earliest musical memories are of just me looking at the 45s, and just before I could read, just looking at the different fonts on the
Hmm.
labels of the 45s, and yeah, a lot of reggae, a lot of Bob Marley, of course, a lot of John Holt, a lot of things like that. And but my dad was also super into like Johnny Mathis and Elton John and
Okay.
Engelbert Humperdinck, Elvis, um, the Commodores. Um, these things would get a lot of play in my house. I remember my dad used to play the hell out of like Daniel from
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
John. I, I
Yeah.
remember that vividly. I remember, the first time I think I ever noticed guitar and just being attracted to it was probably from the guitar solo in Easy like Sunday
Oh
Morning.
yeah.
Um, and so then I started going to school and I started meeting other kids, and I was living in Long Island suburbia, and I'd meet kids and they were into bands like Kiss, um and that's the first time I heard electric guitar like that, and then I saw what they looked like, and then it was like, oh, what is that, and then
Sure.
that sort of really captured my imagination and scared me at the same time too. But there's the natural fascination with that which we can be scared of too. So
Hmm.
um and
That's
then
where you got like the electric guitar, like the chugging,
yeah,
like
yeah,
the distorted guitar sounds and all
yeah, and I
that.
would go over to my friend's house and I'd look through his record collection, and just there was just this crazy, I'd be flipping through his records and kind of being like, oh my God, what's going to be next? Oh my God, what is that? What is that, Iron Maiden? And then
Oh
like seeing
sure.
like images of like
Eddie.
Eddie and everything. And that shit was like frightening.
Sure.
But it was also like you play the music and I was like, okay, it's supposed to be scary. And like, yeah, those guitars, the sound, but the sound of the guitars were just seductive. And there was also this like undeniable melodic sense, and
Yeah,
like,
like Bruce Dickinson's voice isn't like "Brr," like isn't scary by
oh,
any
it's
means.
semi-operatic,
Yeah.
it's like, and there's like a lot of harmony,
Hmm.
things, and having been raised on harmony, you don't realize it as a kid, but there's totally commonalities between, you through all music really, but I mean,
Sure.
through that stuff, it's like there's like a resonance there, just like this is actually beautiful, and I remember like, the kids would like talk about these stories about like Ozzy, like, biting bats off of heads and everything, and then I'd hear like Crazy Train, and then it would get to like the verse. I was like, this actually sounds happy, and like his voice
Right.
sounds pleasing, and then yeah, he's not. It doesn't sound like he's screaming, I mean, there's totally stuff that sounds like screaming, and my friends didn't expose me to that stuff, but he also, this is my friend Chris Garcia. His brother Rich Garcia, and he had a guitar too. So that was the first time I saw a guitar up close.
Oh, how
And
old were you when you saw the guitar?
I was going over to his house probably when I was like 8 years old.
Okay.
Um,
Still
yeah,
young though, elementary school.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I just kind of got obsessed with it, and just everything that sort of was like long in shape, like I would sort of I I would hold it like a guitar and pretend to be playing guitar, and then like if there was a tennis racket, I'd hold it like a guitar. There was like this stick that kept our back door from like opening, to just kind of keep it, locked, and I would take that stick and I'd play it like a guitar, and so it was kind of clear that I was, my spirit was really wanting a real one, and then when I was 10, my parents, they relented and they got me one for my 10th birthday,
Wow.
and uh and
Electric or acoustic
I don't
guitar?
like I got an electric guitar
Okay.
right off the bat because I was that's what I was attracted to, and then
Uh-huh.
I didn't start getting into acoustic guitar until like I would go to summer camp, and I, it was like a kind of a Christian camp, and
Hmm.
I would play guitar during their folk masses and everything, and those summers, there's a Camp de Wolf that I would go to, and that's like where I would really find time to like practice, and it was just a comfort for me to go out to camp, and like if I was homesick, I had a guitar right there. It's just such a portable instrument, you know.
Hmm.
Uh,
And then playing to people there, probably. I mean, you're playing in front of people. Was that like kind of
yeah,
early
yeah, that was
memories
totally
of
a part
playing
of
in
it.
front of like a crowd, so to speak?
Yeah, yeah. My introduction to that, to playing in front of people, was probably, you know, they'd have in school, they'd have like talent shows and everything. I
Mm,
remember we did a talent show, and one of the first songs I played was I think the song called "The Price" by Twisted Sister. It was
okay.
like when "Stay Hungry" came out. So me and this drummer, we did "The Price," and I just remember loving the feeling of taking this thing that you were practicing in your bedroom and like sharing it with others. And then when I was in eighth grade, I yeah, eighth grade, we did another did a battle of the bands, played with a band called Tormentor, and we did a version of Crazy Train, and I sang, and those are like my first like, that was like my first exposure to like playing in front of people and just feeling
Mhm.
like the rush and the nervousness and the excitement of it, and the reaction from it. You know, we did, you know, because we do well. And
Mhm.
but yeah, through the years I'd continue going to camp, and you know, I'd meet, you know, other kids, you know, from Brooklyn and Queens. And you know, it was around the time that, you know, Yo MTV Raps was getting popular. And you know, and also I you know, you had Run DMC, you know, and they
Mhm.
had like a lot of rock in their, you know, their stuff. So
Yeah.
it was you know, it was the time when like rock and rap was, you know, initially fusing with you know, with Walk This Way and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And so I was very much into hip hop too. You know, I was you know, into KRS One, Boogie Down Productions, and EPMD, and I get exposed to all that stuff at camp.
Mhm.
And you know, also like New Edition, you know, a bunch of us would, you know, sing, and kind of we would do like a version of like Can You Stand the Rain,
That's cool.
stuff like that. So it was, you know, between, you know, my world at home and my world at school, and you know, my world at camp, I had a really full musical diet, you know,
Mhm.
in my adolescence. And then, you know, once I got, you know, a little, you know, like around 16, 17, and once the, you know, the teen angst started to kick in, then it was, you know, I started getting into, well, first it was bands like, you know, Living Color, you know, and then
Oh,
Fishbone.
yeah.
You know, that was like huge.
I love Fishbone.
It was super seminal in seeing, you know, like where my place as a black kid in suburbia, where my place was in this music that I was hearing. And you know, once there was like Fishbone and 24/7 Spies and Living Color, like that blew my head like wide open. And then that sort of fed into, as I was mentioning, the teen angst. And like I remember like before I could go to shows, I saw that like Living Color, they played like some college tour with, I think, the Sugar Cubes.
Mm.
And I remember discovering the Sugar Cubes from that. And I had a friend, Michael Grace, who, well, Mike Jackalone, but he's Michael Grace now. He's in the band My Favorite, and he turned me on to a lot of Smiths and a lot of Cure, and of course, and Sugar Cubes. And
Mhm.
it was the beginning of, you know, the 120 minutes phase of you
Oh,
know,
sure.
started getting into the Cocteau Twins. And you know, that music was really speaking to how I was feeling emotionally, probably because of getting, you know, rejected by girls that I was into.
Sure. Your
Music,
perfect phase or just, age and phase for like that, the
yeah,
whole like yeah, that spit or that sound of music. I mean, like Cure and Sugar
yeah, it was
Cubes,
a
like
great
all that.
soundtrack to
Yeah.
heartbreak that I was
Sure.
feeling at the time. You know, just like watching Ferris Bueller, and they're like in the museum, and they're playing the instrumental version of, I think it's "Please, Please, Please Let Me Get What I Want."
Oh, yeah.
Uh, you know, that's like the perfect soundtrack to, you know, like you know, when I heard that song, it's just like, "Please, please, please let me get what I want. Lord knows it'll be the first time." It's like, damn, this guy's got it worse than me. Like I feel seen, you know.
Right.
So yeah, there was that, and then when after I graduated, I really dove all into the shoegaze, and I started discovering the ability to change the sound of the guitar, uh,
Hmm.
and really manipulate it to sound something otherworldly, and I really started getting into. Um, I joined a band called Binsey Poplars, and we had a vocalist who I still know and collaborate with, Mary Askew. She sort of had the ethereal vocal aesthetic, and it was a great foil to write with, and that was sort of what lured me into the beginning of playing in New York, playing places like Don Hills and the Limelight and Brownies and stuff like that, and then I moved into the city, and when I moved to the city, that band that band broke up, and I was just like, all right, here I am, and then I just started jamming with people, just started playing with whoever. I played with the drag queen Head of Lettuce, upon my that was like the first time I was ever paid for playing electric guitar was with Head of Lettuce.
Oh
And
wow.
she'd do like Alanis Morissette covers and change the words, or
Hmm.
it's like kind of just a drag vaudevillian type of thing. And simultaneously I was also just hanging out at night. That's like when you have the age, the drive, the energy to stay out and
Stay
just go
out
to
till
the
4 in the morning. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. And
exactly.
I was teaching preschool during the day.
Oh man, and staying out all night. You are brave.
I mean, that was just I had the energy to do it, and it was like moving into Manhattan. It was just such an incredible time, and there was, that was I had the FOMO before it was identified as such, and and then before I knew it, I was playing in like 10 different bands, playing, there's a band, The Velt, that they later became Apollo Heights, but I was a fan of their band, and I wound up playing with them. There was this guy, TM Stevens, that I played with. TM Stevens is the black guy that played in The Pretenders for a minute.
Oh, okay.
And he also played with Steve Vai and
Wow.
for his solo album with vocals with Devin Townsend. I
Hmm.
played in his band. I played various poets and singers and just jam, dancers. Just it was a very bohemian and atmosphere. We're talking about in the late '90s, like '97, '98, and so forth.
Were you just kind of saying yes to anything you could at that point, just trying to
Oh
see what would break, or
yeah, yeah. It was like
okay?
you'd go to hang out, and then people knew I played guitar, and so it
Mhm.
was just like, instead of hanging out, just come up and play, and bring your instrument, and then and then so there was a lot of saying yes to things, and not a lot of money, but it was cool. I had my job at the preschool, so I wasn't sweating not getting paid, and it
Mhm.
was like I saw it sort of as my education, and I was living on, in a sublet on Grove Street and close to Christopher Street in the West Village. And my parents still lived in Long Island, so I'd go out there on the weekends if I didn't have gigs.
Mhm.
It was a pretty sweet arrangement, and
Yeah.
I was learning so much, and I got to meet Vernon Reed, and I was like,
Yeah. I was gonna ask you about that. Like, don't you have a guitar from him or something?
yeah, yeah. I don't have it anymore, but Vernon would see me around a lot in the West Village because I think he had a girlfriend around there, and so I'd be with the kids that you take them out to the park in the neighborhood and stuff, and I'd see Vernon from time to time,
Wow.
and I remember like I met Vernon a couple times prior to that. I saw him at an art exhibit called Black Male, him and Corey Glover, and I was like, Vernon, the way I feel about you is the way that you feel about Carlos Santana is the way I feel about you, and
Wow. That's
And
quite a compliment. Yeah, I mean, to get
yeah, because
that,
I
I'm
know he's a
sure.
huge Carlos Santana fan,
Yeah.
and we just sort of, I kept in touch with him because I went and saw him play somewhere in Central Park, and I had a book, a Hendrix book, and the Hendrix book was dedicated to Vernon, and I was reading the book at the time, and I wanted Vernon to sign it, and he's like, "This is a deep book, we should talk about this." And I think, at the time, Living Color had just broken up, and I
Mhm.
think he probably got, he just had a lot of time on his hands, I think. So he was able to really indulge me. And just, I got to go out I remember I went to coffee with him and just had, just like a 2 hour conversation. It was just like mind blowing because I
I was
had,
gonna say, can you, if you told yourself like when you were younger, just a fan of Living Color, that would happen to you one day, I'm sure there's no way you would have ever
yeah,
believed it.
yeah, yeah. I wouldn't have believed it. It was, and it's been sort of the beginning of what I was to later discover, like a lot of experiences like that. But with Vernon, that was the seminal experience like that. And I remember I was on my way to, like, a few months after that. I was on my way to a gig with Head of Lettuce. We had a gig at Don Hill's, and I saw Vernon randomly. He was just like driving in his car, and he was like, "Oh, when's your birthday?" And I said, "Oh, it's September 30th." And then he was like, "Okay." And then, like, 3 months later, I got a call saying he had something for me. And he lived on 30th Street at the time. And I walked up to 30th Street, and he came out of, I didn't even go inside the apartment. He just came out, and he, like, put down like a case, and he opened it, and it was a late 60s Gibson Les Paul gold top. And he's like, "I'm not trying to buy your friendship. If we never ever talk again, that's cool, but this is yours now." And I was like, "You can't be serious." And he's like, "I think you better take it before I change my mind." And so yeah, and I
Oh,
actually,
wow.
like, and then he's like, "The only thing I ask, if you meet somebody someday and you think that they deserve this guitar, you should give it to them." And
Oh.
yeah, and about 14 years ago, I met a kid, Asim. I don't, his last name escapes me, but I played in a band. One of the many bands I played with was a band called Burnt Sugar,
Mhm.
and Asim was also I think he was the son of one of the trumpet players that played in Burnt Sugar. And I heard about him, and I saw him playing, and he was like really dope player. And I just had the feeling, I was like, maybe SM is the person I should be giving this guitar to. And so I passed it on to him.
Wow. I wonder if he still has it or he's gifted it forward. That's such a cool thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's yeah. And then I came out with a signature guitar
Mhm.
last year, and talking to Vernon, he was just like, "Hey man, I think I would, you're Mr. Gibson now. It'd be cool if, maybe hook me up with a Les Paul. And then on another occasion we were talking, and he was like, "Hey, yeah, you're Mr. Gibson now. Like, when am I gonna get a Captain Kirk signature guitar?" And I was like, "Does does he want a gold top, or does he want a signature guitar?" And then so actually, I wound up arranging for Gibson to make a gold version of my signature guitar. And we went out to lunch a few months ago, and at the end of lunch, we were leaving, and the woman was the co-check. She brought this guitar out, and I was like, "Oh, Vern, I got to show this to you." And I laid the guitar down, and I was like, "Now, I'm not trying to buy your friendship, and if we never ever talk again, that's cool, but this is yours now." And I presented him with the gold Captain Kirk signature guitar, so that was pretty cool.
Wow, that is awesome. That is such a cool story. Oh
That's
my
like a
gosh.
nice little.
Yeah, well, that's so cool. That is, I thought you were gonna be like, when's your birthday?
No, I couldn't pretend to not know this
I'm
information over the
kidding.
years.
I'm kidding. Wow, okay. That's so crazy. That's so cool.
Yeah.
So you in 2000, wait, it was like 2003 when you joined the Roots?
Yeah, and
Okay.
Actually, I joined the Roots because there's the guitar player for the Roots at the time. His name is Ben Kinney,
Hmm.
and he went on to join the band Incubus.
Hmm.
The Roots toured with Incubus, and he got really friendly with those guys, and he wanted to do some more rock stuff. So he recorded the Roots record Phrenology, and then he left the band, and they were they were left about to tour for that album, and they actually got Vernon Reed to replace Ben for a few dates. And,
Wow.
this is around the time when they're like playing in New York a lot, and they were asking around people, asking around who would make sense as a replacement, somebody more permanent. And my name kept coming up from Vernon and from other people like around. And then so I wound up auditioning, me and I don't think many other people. It's like it was such a different time. It's like it probably would be way different if you think of it in terms of now, when there's you can just probably just put an announcement on social media and just get like a bajillion responses.
Well, yeah, but again, for a band like them who already had an established thing going, they probably wouldn't want to find some like you'd have to gel with them and everything, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
if you're going to
Well,
spend that much time with these people,
yeah, playing is only a small part of the whole picture.
right?
So I auditioned with just really Questlove, just to see if I could just play with him, just the two of
Hmm.
us. And then when I discovered that I had the gig, it was still like it was still sort of a trial basis. So I met the rest of the band actually at the airport going to Japan. Uh,
Oh, wow.
yeah, and
And you hadn't played with them all together yet. You only played with Questlove.
only Questlove, yeah. And I remember meeting Black Thought at the airport. He's like, wait, so your name is Kirk Douglas? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, that's fucked up, man. That was my introduction.
Uh,
And then and so I met everybody, and then I didn't talk to them for another 13 hours, 12 hours, however long the flight is.
oh,
I
so
should know. We
it
just
wasn't like you guys were chatting, like it wasn't one of these things like, okay, let's get to know you and
No,
vibe.
no.
No,
Everybody gets on
nothing.
the plane and just wants to like be left alone.
Sure. Oh,
Um,
wow.
I mean, yeah, like so we land, and I mean, I just remember my first gig with them, and just like it was like a 5,000 seater venue, and just I mean, I just remember having a really big smile on my face and just looking down, trying to hide it, because there's just like everybody else around me looked so like kind of just tough and from Philly, and it's like and here I am like cheesing and everything. I was just looking down, and then but it wound up going well. And I remember I'd seen the Roots actually that day that Vernon asked me when my birthday was. I forgot to mention that I was gonna go see the Roots that night, and I told Vernon, I was like, "Yo, I'm gonna see this band, The Roots tonight." And Vernon was like, "Oh, I'm gonna be sitting in with them actually."
Oh,
And it's like,
wow.
"Oh, cool," and I saw Vernon play with The Roots that night, and I remember seeing them and thinking like, "This must be an amazing band to play with," thinking that. Um, but yeah, so I had my tickets from that night. It was at the Knitting Factory back in the day on Leonard Street. I had my ticket, and I had everybody sign the ticket. I don't even think I can find it anymore. It was so
Oh, man. I was gonna say, if you have that, that's crazy.
yeah. Probably if I tear my bedroom apart at my mom's house, I'd probably find it, but I don't really have time to put it back together. Um, but yeah, because I didn't know how long it would last. I just didn't know if I was just like a band-aid,
Hmm.
which I was, but I had no idea how long it would last. It could have been like a month or just for Japan. But the shows went well, and then it was like, okay, let's see how this goes once we return to the States. And then after we did shows returning to the States, then we went to Europe, and that was just like 2003, and I had just gotten married. Um, it was such a whirlwind, and then 2 years after that, it's like when we started having kids, and it was just a fun experience. It was just a great way to see the world,
Yeah.
and to get to know everybody. Everybody was really cool, and yeah, it was just really incredible experience. And then
Did they eventually ask, like, did they eventually go, okay, you're in the band now, or was it just like this
well,
assumed thing?
looking back, it was like um, we did these dates opening up for Dave Matthews,
Wow.
and I remember it was like that summer, later that summer, we were open. We did like a week with Dave Matthews, and then one night Dave asked me to come up and play All Along the Watchtower with him,
Wow.
and this is San Francisco. What's the
The big one, the big
Shoreline
amphitheater,
Amphitheater?
shoreline. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mountain View. Okay.
yeah. We played Shoreline, and we did All Along the Watchtower out
Wow.
there, and my wife was at that show. It was like it was a heavy show, man,
Hmm.
and then I remember, just the vibe was just like, all right, like we already had the experience of like a guitar player leaving, just like let's we're a thing now, right? It was just kind of after that, it just kind of became like kind of official. Like that's when contracts were like talked
Drawn
about.
up. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, at that point. So that's when it
Wow.
felt like kind of official.
That's so cool. That is crazy. Well, how long have you been doing your solo project for? Is this an all new, or like have you been writing songs yourself for a long time?
I've always written songs throughout, just for my own thing, for my own sanity, for my own enjoyment.
Hmm.
And so in 2016, I think, yeah, it was around 2016 when the Roots started doing some we started doing um oh, I'm forgetting this is a podcast. Is there editing in this?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. We're
Um
not live. You can go.
okay, cool, yeah. We were doing some work in Electric Lady Studios, um and I just remember having a really good feeling about that place. And I think at work we were doing some sort of like fantasy football thing, and at the Tonight Show we were doing some fantasy football, and I won, and I never really win anything, and when I won, I was just like, oh, that'd be cool to use this money to like record at Electric Lady
Oh,
with
cool.
songs that I've been writing. And then so it's sort of, I've done stuff prior to that, but that I guess I'm speaking about what led to my previous album. I did a album with, I like to call it 100 Watt Heart, and
Uh huh.
it was released in 2019, and that was recorded at Electric Lady. So that's what sort of
Started
spawned
it.
started me like saying, hey, I think I want to like record and like actually put out records.
Hmm.
So that was the first instance of doing that. But I mean, probably through my entire time in the Roots have been writing other things. It's just as our schedule is so demanding, it's very hard to like execute, and hard to like record.
Sure.
And the only reason that there's a new release that's about to be happening is that we had a pandemic, and then
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm not unique or not the first person that's mentioned an opportunity to record and to be creative in a way that you're sort of like almost forced to, because of just there being such limited
Yeah.
options as to
Right. You
what you
really
could
have
do.
nothing for your job, especially. I mean, playing, obviously, touring and live shows and Tonight Show, all that involves being out and about and around people. So
Yeah,
having that time to finally, okay, well, I can't really leave.
yeah,
So what am I gonna do?
yeah. And then what you could do is just get more deeply into what you know. And
Mhm.
for me it was like, we had to sort of like send in our individual instruments for many things for the Tonight Show. So I had to really, develop my aptitude with home recording,
Oh,
which
okay.
I always kind of found a little challenging, as you probably saw when I was trying to get the headphones to work at the beginning of the podcast. So I had to figure that out kind of quickly, and in that process, I was able to find how to record myself, for my own, artistic endeavors, and through the things I had to get for the show, and a combination of repetition, and also many phone calls with some of the other routes that are better skilled with home recording. I was able to sort of get into a workflow, and I was already kind of delving into it in the months prior. Like I was
Mhm.
kind of like dipping my toe in, but once there was a lockdown, I was able to go like all in with it. And there was no intention to say like, okay, I'm gonna make an album, but it's just I'm gonna record. And then after a certain amount of time, you realize that there's enough material for an album, and arranged a certain way, it can make for one that's actually kind of cohesive.
Mhm.
So, and once that's done, and once it's, nuanced and everything, and just it's like, okay, I'd like to share this. So that's sort of where we're at now.
So was this album recorded at home? Did you go take the stems and re-record them anywhere, or was it all done at your house during that lockdown period?
It was actually done. Well, lockdown, I guess, happened in March,
Mhm.
and when we got to the summer, that's sort of when there was a little bit of a
Like that
release, and
window,
people started
yeah.
to like see each other again, and in outdoor spaces, and it's when testing became a thing, and just people were able to find a way to feel, to sort of be around each other in a way that felt safe. And so then
Mhm.
I was able to see my mom, and the drummer in the project, Rick Sheridan. Like we would just go out to my mom's, and we would grill. It was around like August, and we would also, I would set up mics, and we'd sort of like, okay, let's just play and just see what happens. And that's sort of like what we did. We would grill and eat and go down, and we play and come up and eat again and go back down and play. My and and also my wife and kids. My wife is Danish, and uh, the plan was for the kids to do a school year in Denmark.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't just lockdown. It was like lockdown, and also my family being away, and for me
Mhm.
having, you know, the type of time that I hadn't seen since I was like in my 20s.
Right, right.
Um,
I was gonna say, was it difficult to have them across the world with was the pandemic happening, or had it happened, or were they
it
already
was it
over
was
there?
it was happening, but it's in its own way. Denmark at the time was a lot more relaxed
Mm,
than it was in
okay.
Brooklyn. And then by
Well,
the
sure.
time I went
Brooklyn
to
was, I
visit them,
mean, New York was bad for a long
yeah.
time. Sure.
But around the time that I went to visit them, which was like end of August
Mhm.
2020, is when they just started implementing, the types of mandates that we had here.
Oh.
So it eventually kind of got like that over there.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it was difficult being away from them, but it was like, so part of my, finding solace was to throw myself into recording,
Mhm.
and when you're recording, that's a time when you're really putting things under a microscope, and there was a lot of like editing that was being done, and a lot of just you're really able to immerse yourself in a way that, and that you're under normal circumstances, with your family around a lot of time, in a way you're not usually able to. So,
Mhm.
and I was also uh, um, they were providing transportation for us for NBC, because
Mhm.
this is pre-vaccinations. This is um, nobody wants anybody to get sick during this time. So for
Sure.
a very limited time, NBC was providing transportation for the Roots, and so that made it really easy to like listen to things on your computer and
Hmm.
to really have like a seamless workflow without having to like get on the subway and deal with normal logistics of our time.
Right, right. Well, I love the song that you have out so far. I watched the video earlier as well for "We Can Be One."
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, it's and is that kind of I mean, well, tell me about the song. I love the sound of it. Is that kind of how the record is going to feel all the way through?
No, no, not
Oh,
at all.
well, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. It's sort of I mean, when I mean, it's sort of the fun thing about doing things independently. And the fun thing about, when, as far as like your career is concerned, I guess my career is more like the Roots,
Sure.
and 100 Watt Heart, and that's like completely for fun. So, it's like, if 100 Watt Heart was my career, one could be saying, oh, this is career suicide, or what are you doing with your career? Or it's like, but you were able to even be creative with what you choose to release, because there's no like team of
Hmm.
experts and non-experts all trying to decide like what is best. So yeah, it's a rock album, but it's like, I mean, you could use the analogy of, uh, the first one that comes, like if Zeppelin was to release Fool in the Rain as a single,
Oh, gotcha.
one could
Okay.
say, okay, so I guess the rest of the album is going to sound like Fool in the Rain.
Cool
It's like,
rain.
no. It's like if Kiss was to release Beth, as a single, it's like that wound up being like the most popular song on the album, but in no way indicative of what the album sounds like. So
Right.
I guess We Can Be One, it's like it's I guess I released it also because it involves the most people. There's James Poyser from the Roots playing keyboards. Um, there's Ian Henderson Smith, and there's Dave Guy from the Roots on horns for it. And I it's a very like jubilant sort of, it just involves so many people,
Hmm.
and I liked the message of it. I loved and I didn't like last release I had, like the first single was like a complete like, it was like super rock,
Hmm.
and I wanted to like kind of take a different approach as far as introducing people to the album, and sort of, have fun with it that way. So that was the thought behind having that be the first single.
Okay. Well, like I said, I love the song. It's such a rap, and the video is really cool too. It's so like party vibe, like people kind of hanging out and playing, and I
Yeah,
just think it's cool.
yeah, that was done actually. There's parts in the bedroom that's like the bedroom I grew up in.
Really?
Yeah, that's like my childhood bedroom. The basement, that's like the basement of my mom's. Um, that's I wanted it to be, um, have things from my actual life in there,
Hmm.
and sort of like, just like a kind of a time capsule of what I was experiencing, like the mask in it, that's from a gig that I played, in Italy with the Roots, last year. Just it's fun when you're able to like include things from your actual life experience,
Hmm.
I mean, and it's also my first video, so it's like you sort of, go with what you know. So that's what I did. I don't know what the next one would be, but it felt like a good jumping off point. And the director, I found the director through somebody in my building, um, and he, we both work at the Park Slope Food Co-op, and we were driving home one day. He was giving me a ride home, and he was like, we were talking about what we were doing during the pandemic, and I was like, I recorded an album, and he was like, oh well, I actually work in videos and stuff like that, and I actually know a director, and he's really talented, and maybe it'll be a good fit. And had a meeting. We talked about it. I played them the song and told them my idea and asked if that was something they think that they would be capable of conveying. And they're like, yeah. And we took a couple days and made it happen. It was so much fun just to do. And I was like, if this comes out anywhere near as fun as it was to do, then I'll be totally happy. And it was like totally exemplified, the type of day that we had, and
Mhm.
the energy of the day totally, I think, came across in the end result too. So,
I love it. I love it. And thank you so much for doing this today, Kurt. I really appreciate your time.
oh, no problem.
I do have one more quick question before I let you go today. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Oh, I'd say persistence. I'd say, do it for your own enjoyment. I think it's good to be honest with what your motivations are. If you're doing it for, you've got to like move yourself first and foremost. I think you got to really enjoy what it is that you're doing, and then once you're enjoying it, and then I think it's then you can share with other people. And it's good to have you know friends that are honest and that can give you like feedback. And I think it's good to like have you know friends that you could play stuff for that can honestly enjoy it. Like, that's like you can think of um what you do, like if you could do it amongst friends, if you could do it like, and your friends can support you, you can sort of like expand your friend group. And that's, I think that's what the when the process becomes like really like organic. And I think and through modern technology, through the internet, it's like you can sort of find your people more, and you can find your people um, your way without having to rely as much on a record company to be the go between. They
Mhm.
have their place, but like it's in such a way now that you can really put your feelers out there, and you can really be more in control of your output. I get inspired from my son. My son, he raps, and he is just very up on how the plays he gets, where he gets plays from on SoundCloud. And it's pretty inspiring to see how persistent he is with it, and how much how into what he's doing. He's so into what he's doing. Um, and yeah, he's just persistent, and he's persistent because he truly enjoys it. A lot of times I get into like my head a lot, and then I like kind of the way I deaden it is just by like, hey, this is supposed to be fun. That's why you're doing what you're doing. It's like, that's
Mhm.
why I'm talking to, like, talking about the process. It's like, it's fun. And when it's not fun, really think about, why is this not fun, and what can be adjusted to bring it back to the fun.
Bringing it backward.